Have you ever actually been in that place where you realize you really cannot get there from here? This weekend, we were picking up someone to go to a luncheon with us. We had three events in one day on Saturday: a breakfast, a luncheon, and a dinner. And each one of them were scattered 25 to 30 miles away from each other. And between point one and point two, we had to pick up someone who is going to the lunch and the dinner with us because she doesn't have transportation. She's a visitor from a foreign country. But the directions told us to follow a particular exit off the highway and turn a particular way. And when we got to that intersection, there was a police car in that intersection with barricades. And we could see the corner where we were supposed to turn, but we were not allowed to pass where the police car was parked. And so I dutifully turned at the intersection where we were, and I tried to follow the detour signs. My navigation system completely freaking out the entire way, telling me, you need to make a U-turn. You've got to go this way. You've got to go that way. And I know that you've all experienced that if you've driven anywhere where they do permanent road construction or destruction, as the case may be. In the Dallas-Fort Worth area, there's never not a road under construction. You can't go from here to the mailbox and not find a road that someone's torn up for the purpose of repaving. It's almost like job security. It's kind of bizarre. But if at any point in your life you've made that journey and you come to the point of road destruction or a crime scene or an accident investigation, that's what happened to me last week leaving Austin. What should have been a 3-hour journey turned into closer to a 6-hour journey. I finished with my client at almost 8 o'clock at night. Should have been home by midnight, easy peasy, even stopping for dinner. Instead, I got home at a little after 2:30. I was closer to 2:45 by the time I actually got in the garage. Because of road construction? No, because of an accident on the road. But they didn't just have the accident. They decided to have the accident and then close down the entire highway, the entire interstate highway, all lanes closed, so they could take pictures of the accident scene while the accident was fresh. My navigation system knew that it wanted me to bypass a certain way and go some 20 miles out of my way to get back on the interstate, but it didn't bother to tell me in any way that the reason was that the interstate was closed. And so I thought, well, I'll take my chances on this 3-mile stretch. Turned out to be 4.7 miles. Took 48 minutes to journey there. Now, had I listened to my navigation system at that point, I would have been able to avoid all of that, and I would have gone 20 miles out of the way. But that extra 20 miles would have shaved about 2.5 hours off my trip. Isn't that bizarre? See, the challenge that we have sometimes is that we don't either A, hear the voices that redirect us, or B, respect them. Now, I know a little bit about the neighborhood where I had to go pick up my friend, a little bit. I've driven through it a few times, and I know that most of it is kind of a spiral circular pattern from the center of the neighborhood out. There are only a few ways to kind of get into that neighborhood, and then the streets kind of cross each other. But you can't just turn on any road and get in there, because many of those roads just dead end. They kind of branch off, but you can't go from one side to the other. You have to kind of come into that neighborhood from different sides. And so I was making my way around the outside, and the whole time my navigation system wanted me to go that way. It had no idea that there was a police scene or something of that nature that was causing us not to be able to go down that road. That was the only way the navigation system knew. What if your navigation system was smarter than that? What if the thing that you listen to get you to the place you're going not only knows about the detours, like an accident scene that shut down the entire interstate freeway, or the barricades that are up because of police activity, or the road construction, or the busted water main? That's what happened to us the previous weekend. Everybody coming for a conference that I was speaking at with my son couldn't get to the conference. They had to be rerouted several miles through multiple red lights and a lot of Saturday morning traffic, believe it or not, because a ruptured water main 1 block further south from where we were shut off an entire traffic flow for hours. And of course that meant the building too was limited on water pressure for all the things that you use water for. But what if your navigation system could see and foresee those kinds of things? How powerful would that be? I remember when I was in the Air Force, I was young, probably it was my uh, first duty assignment, but I was on a temporary duty assignment to a place in Central America. And while we were there, we were out one day just doing driver's training, driving a truck around the base so I could get my license on the truck. I was not yet licensed on this truck. I was in driver training to get my license on the truck. And one of the things that I had to be able to do to prove that I could navigate the truck was to be able to drive it around the base and then back it through certain areas and that kind of stuff. My crew chief and I had only worked together maybe 2 or 3 times at that point. And so we rounded a corner in this fire truck that it's so long it has 4 complete axles. The tires are 57 inches in diameter and there are 4 of them on each side. All 4 axles drive. So it's an 8-wheel drive truck with 2 diesel motors in the back of it. Carries 700 gallons of water, has a bumper turn, all this other stuff. So it's a powerful, powerful truck. It's also a very big truck. Think just a little larger than a city bus, and it doesn't bend in the middle. It's like a giant city bus. So we rounded this corner, and we get about 20 yards down the road, and there's a tractor, a farm tractor, in the middle of the road, and its axle is broken, and so both wheels are sticking out sideways like this, and the butt of the tractor is sitting on the road. It's not like they can move it out of the way. They're going to have to get some specialized equipment to lift up this tractor and replace the axle, or at least something to tow it out of the way. It's not moving anytime soon. So as we're sitting there, my crew chief says, well, we can't just be trapped behind this tractor. If there's a fire response, if there's a crash, we've got to be able to get to it. So just go around them. And I looked and I said, you know, I grew up in a rural country town in central Texas. I know a fresh plowed field when I see one. That's not a good idea. He's like, it's an all-wheel drive truck. The tires are almost 5 feet tall. There's no way it's going to get stuck. Okay, sir. So I begin to go off the side of the road. All the local natives are just kind of looking at us. They're not waving us off. They're not telling us don't go there. They're just watching as we drive off the road into this freshly plowed field, and we get about 50 feet. And this 20-ton, 40,000-pound truck loaded with water, 2 diesel motors, comes to a screeching halt. And he said, is it an all-wheel drive? And so I dropped it in neutral and I engaged all eight wheels and I put it back and I gave it a little gas and mud flew everywhere and the truck didn't move an inch. And he's like, oh my gosh. Well, he jumps out of the truck. And when he jumps out of the truck, he's up past his knees in fresh plowed mud. He's just shaking his head. And I said, it's a fresh plowed field, dude. That's kind of what I suspected. He walks around to the front of the truck and the mud is up past the bumper. Now the bumper on this truck is higher than my shoulder and the mud is almost to the windshield. Yeah, it was stuck. And at 40,000 pounds, it's not like they're going to hook on a farm tractor and pull it out of there either. Well, I did manage to engage all 8 wheels and get it moving backward back onto the roadway. Now we have one other problem. Remember, this truck isn't articulated and it's just a little bigger than a city bus. Well, he's supposed to be spotting me, but he's moving from one side of the truck to the other and only paying attention to the one side. And as I back around the corner, I'm doing okay. And the problem is, once I get around the 90-degree corner, there's no place to really turn around, and to go straight back until there's a place to turn around is about half a mile. And he doesn't really want to do that, but there's a little turnout that if I turn this way and then immediately turn this way, then I can drive out. And so I get the back end around the corner, and then he says, cut it sharp to the left, and we'll just put the tail in here and then drive out. But he's only watching the back of the truck. See, what he failed to miss is that on the side where they plowed, where the nose of the truck was, the ground was level from road to field. But on the side where the nose of the truck was going to have to go in order for me to back the tail into this little covey, there was a 6-foot drainage ditch. And so we managed to get the nose of the truck this way and then this way, And as I started to go this way, he's screaming bloody murder. Now, I can't see any of this. I'm in the truck 8 feet in the air. And he opens his door, and the truck is above his head because he's standing in the bottom of that bar ditch. The front 4 wheels are in the plowed field. The back 4 wheels are in the road, and you could run a troop of soldiers underneath that truck because it was up there. And now I'm looking at him going, could you not see that when you navigated my front wheels to there? And he's literally crying. He had no idea what we were going to do next. And so I got out and I walked around the truck a couple of times. I looked at everything, and I realized that these 2 wheels, being 60 inches almost in diameter and with almost a full foot between them, they span almost 15 feet of space. The bar ditch is only 8 feet wide. It's 6 feet deep, but it's only 8 feet wide. I couldn't fully cram either one of those wheels in there, which told me if I get those wheels in that ditch, I should have traction on both sides. And after the back wheel drops into the ditch, the front wheel's still on the field, the back wheel will catch the road before the front wheel falls in the ditch. And if I can do that with enough speed, then I should be able to get across there. Well, like I said, he's in tears. He doesn't know what to do next. I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to stand right here. I'm going to drive forward as far as I can, hoping that I don't get stuck in the freshly plowed field. But I need the back wheels to be able to get as much momentum as possible. So I want to roll them all the way forward to the ditch. And when they're at the ditch, you tell me to stop. Then I'm going to put it in reverse, and I'm going to roll backwards so fast, the front end is going to bounce a little bit because it's going to dip into the ditch, but it won't fit in the ditch. So it'll bounce and then back on the road and we'll be good to go. I'm telling you, he was crying like a 5-year-old girl who lost her princess wand. Rolled it up to the road, got ready to back up. And here's where I want to ask you the question. When you found yourself in that place that the navigators who got you where you are can't get you out, when you followed your directions on your phone or your directions on your Garmin or your directions on your map or your directions of your co-pilot, whether that's your wife or your friend or your son or your husband or your brother or whomever, when you follow those directions as far as you can, what do you do now? When you can see your destination, when you understand that just right over the precipice is where I'm going, when your vision is beginning to come into picture, into view, but you can't get there from here, what do you do now? Here's a question that I want to ask you. If you knew for certain that there was a navigator that was better than your Garmin, better than your Siri, better than your Google, that knew not only what road was supposed to be there, but what road might have been destroyed, or I love the new features on the Siri update, it will tell you which lane you're supposed to be in. For some of those roads where, 2 lanes merge in and then immediately 1 lane is an exit only, and then the next one is an exit only, and now you're down to 3 lanes, and then another 2 merge in from the right side, and now you don't know if you're the first lane, the third lane, or the 5th lane. But your exit's coming up, and it's telling you on a 1/4 mile exit. Well, Siri now tells you need to be in the far right lane, or stay in the left 3 lanes, or stay in the left 4 lanes, or stay in the 4th lane from the right, because it knows now which one of those lanes is going to exit, which one's going to go straight. It also has a little speed limit sign, so if you come onto a highway from a driveway and you don't know how fast you're supposed to be going, your little Siri indicator has a speed limit sign right on the Siri. That's so awesome. But it doesn't know when there's road construction. Awesome. It doesn't know when there's a police scene or police activity. That's awesome. What if there was a navigator who not only knew the speed limit, the right lane, the right directions, but any shortcuts that might pop up at the last minute, any opportunity to go some direction that you haven't gone before, any way to get around obstacles that might be popping up in the process? Sometimes you come over the hill and you realize there's brake lights as far as you can see, but if you take this exit, then you know the way around. Even though your navigator hasn't told you yet, you already know the way around. You know how to get through this. I heard Bishop T.D. Jakes talking about being in the jungle on safari, and he said, the elephant has as its defense his size and his weight, and the lion, he has his roar, and the eagle has his ability to fly away from the scene, and the cheetah has his speed. But what does a human have? He's a soft, fleshy tissue. He's not very big. He's not very fast. He's not very loud. And he can't fly. What means of survival did the human have to make it in the jungle wild? And the answer was his brain, his mind. We are different in that we have the ability to think, but we also have one other distinct advantage. And that is that we have opportunity to have a connection to a navigator who's never been wrong. A navigator who's never missed one accident scene, one police activity, one road construction, one last minute accident just happened, not even reported to the police yet, stopping traffic kind of thing. He's ahead of all of them. He also knows when you followed all the directions you've been given and now you're sitting at a dead-end road and you're looking where the road has been washed out by the rain, at the other side going, you cannot get there from here. There is no bridge to get there from here. What do you do now? See, I've found in my life that if we're willing to ask the question, when was the last time I checked in with my navigator? When was the last time I asked him, what did I do wrong last? I remember when I first started leading people to Christ as a young man, 19 or 20 years old, as I was getting the concept of repentance and transformation, as I was learning to apply that to my own life, I remember having a conversation with someone and they said, I couldn't go to church, it'd just fall down on my head. You don't even know the bad things that I've done. There's no way for me to get to heaven from here. And I had a revelation in that moment, an enlightened vision, if you will. Call it what you want to. And in this vision, I saw a road map and like a little journey. And this, sadly enough, was before the days of GPS. I saw the little journey, probably from the movies, where you see the map and you see all the highways and you could see the little car moving along like a Monopoly game, and the little car reaches a destination and then kind of wanders around in circles for a minute. But the little red dots that were supposed to take it from Dallas to Manhattan went this way, and the little car's track went this way. And God said, that's you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, so I got to go all the way back to Dallas before I can get to Manhattan? And he said, no. With me, you can get there from here. Even though many people would tell you you can't get there from here, if you'll listen closely. You don't have to backtrack all the mistakes that you've made. You don't have to undo every wrong turn since the last time. But what you do have to do is acknowledge that there was a point where you were on track, where you were listening to your GPS, where you were following the instructions you were given. And then there was also a series of points where you weren't. There was a point where you were doing everything you were told, and it led you to where you are. Maybe along the way, you've started to listen like I did to my crew chief. I should have known that my experience and my history, even though he was older than me, even though he outranked me, even though he'd been in the service longer than me, even though for that day he was my boss, I know what a fresh plowed field is like. I've tried to run through them. I've tried to drive the tractor through them after we've plowed them. That's not a good plan. I knew a 40,000 pound truck wasn't going to roll right through there like it would on paved asphalt. But I followed the instructions I was given by someone who didn't know. And then I followed his directions. Turn left, a little right, a little left, a little right, a little left, a little right, cut it sharp to the left. And now we have an 8-foot ditch between the front axles and the back axles. And my navigator is crying like a baby without his sucker. What do you do in that moment? What do you do when you realize your Siri can't get you there from here? What do you do when your Google can't get you there? Your Garmin can't get you there from here. It doesn't know the way past the mistakes that you've made. No one around you can tell you, yeah, I've been there, I know how to get back. You need two things in your life at that moment. Number one, you need a mentor. Someone who has been there and who knows the way out. And number two, you need a GPS system. A godly providence system. Who not only knows the way out, but knows every turn you're supposed to take between now and your destiny. He knows when to tell you, hang on, wait a second, I know the light is green, but don't go yet as another car flies through the intersection. See, it's one thing to listen to your GPS that says proceed on the route. But when your GPS doesn't know what your Father knows, you better be listening to your Father. He has insight and understanding and wisdom. And yes, he may give you instructions that are completely contrary to everything else you're being told. As I was making my way around that neighborhood, following the instincts and the experiences that I had, listening to my Father, making my way around that neighborhood, my GPS wasn't happy. My phone was trying to take me all kinds of ways. She was yelling at me to make U-turns and turn left here and turn right there. And you're going to have to get back on the highway. She was trying to redirect me back to the service road, and I would have ended up in the same intersection again. I was watching her reroute. She had no idea how to solve the problem that I had in front of me until I found myself in an entirely different place. When my crew chief found me straddling an 8-foot ditch, he was like my Siri. He had reached the point at the end of his own knowledge, at the end of his own insight, at the end of his own ability to move forward to the next problem. How do we solve where we are? And I'm willing to bet that at some point in your life, you've reached exactly that same point. You've reached the place where all of your own resources, all of your own limitations are capped out. Everybody you know to tap out and go, hey, help me with this, is clueless. Every book you've read, every course you've taken, every class you've graduated from, every degree and every certification leaves you in the same roadblock. And that's when it's time to tap your Father and go, give me back all the experiences I've had that will give me some knowledge, some wisdom. Remind me where I got off course. Show me how to get back on course. What detours do I need to unfollow? What do I need to reroute? Because sometimes you're at the dead end road, and the only way to get off a dead end road is to go back the way you came. But that doesn't mean you have to go all the way back to where you started to progress. You may have to backtrack some of the mistakes you've made, undo some of the relationships that you've formed, break some of the contracts that you've written, walk away from some of the deals that you've invested deeply in. But it doesn't mean you have to start over. It means that you have to start in implicit, immediate obedience right now. Maybe you have to back up 100 yards. Maybe you have to find another road. Maybe he's going to tell you, you know what, it's time to pull your pants legs up and take off across that field. But whatever your godly providence system tells you is the next move, you better be listening close. The instructions might make as much sense as Jericho. Walk around those walls 7 times and sing. Now, there's probably some scientific evidence to the resonance of those jars of clay and the walking that caused the ground to tremble with that many people walking consistently. There's all kinds of scientific, but let me tell you something. There is no strategy book in the world that says if you want to attack a large walled city, just walk around it 7 times. That doesn't exist. It's not there. It's not in your Garmin. It's not in your Siri. It's not in your Google Maps. No one knows that kind of strategy. It's not printed out. And no one would have applied it. It was godly providence system that said, here's the way we're going to do this. If you will listen closely to each small, minute move, you may find yourself there. Well, surely enough, my experience and my expectations paid off. My ability to do a little bit of basic math. I rolled that truck up as far as it would go. I dropped it in reverse. I said a quick prayer, and then I floored it. And when those 2 diesel engines fired up and both turbos fired up, the black smoke poured out of the top of that old truck, and it grunted and it groaned, and those back wheels spun a little bit, and then that 40,000-pound truck shot backwards like a rocket. When it got to the ditch, it started to come off of there, and then the back wheels of the front set caught the ditch. It bounced about 3 feet up in the air, came down with a hard thud, and it was on solid ground. I backed into the little alcove and I started to pull out on the road, and the crew chief was like I don't even know how to describe him. He was like a middle school cheerleader. He didn't know if he was supposed to be laughing or crying, but he was jumping all up and down and all over himself and dusting the mud off of his clothes and trying to get back in the truck. And when we got back to the fire station, he's like, I don't know what all you've destroyed on this truck, but it's a mess. So we took it back to the truck, back to the station. We washed all the mud off, explained to the chief that we got trapped behind a tractor and had to drive through a plowed field. He said, that's a bad idea. You're lucky you got out of there without us pulling you out. Turns out, in all of the mayhem, I broke one thing on the truck, and that was the little plastic ring that holds the swinging bumper turret in place on the front of the P4. That was it. That's all we did. But there's a point where you've got to listen to more than the best advice at hand. The smartest person in that crew didn't have the right answer. It took a little bit of divine providence. I'm going to tell you right now, you may be facing an obstacle in your life where there's financial, relational, emotional, educational, and you're going, I just can't see my way out. I don't know how to get there from here. But he does. And if you'll take the time to ask him, he'll tell you. Follow the instructions he gives you. It'll change your life. I'm J Loren Norris, and you've been watching Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.